Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. Our goal is to get to the root issues of systemic problems using a theological and psychological lens. We hope you enjoy. Great conversations don't happen by accident. They're made possible by organizations that believe people deserve hope, healing, and access to resources that change lives. We're grateful for our premier sponsors, Wellness by Dr. Natalia and Uprising Addiction Center. Wellness by Dr. Natalia provides a personalized approach to healthcare through concierge and integrative medicine, helping patients take a proactive approach to their health and well-being. Uprising Addiction Center is committed to helping individuals and families break free from addiction through compassionate, evidence-based care and support. Their team is dedicated to helping people find hope, healing, and a path forward towards lasting recovery. To learn more about our sponsors and the service they provide, click the links below. And now let's get to today's conversation. Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, and today on Asking Why, I'm joined by Ryan Gatti, a Louisiana trial lawyer from state senator, former workers' compensation judge, and licensed minister for more than 26 years of legal experience as well. Ryan recently secured a landmark $1.1 billion with a B verdict under Louisiana child sexual abuse look-back law, bringing national attention to the law designed to give survivors another opportunity to seek justice. So today we're going to talk about what that look-back law is and why it matters and what it means for survival, the legal system, and our community. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Clint, thanks for having me on your show. You know, I've listened to almost all 194 episodes preceding this one, and I just want to thank you for what you do in the community. You know, I tell folks if you're carrying around baggage, this office is a great place to unpack it and figure out what it means. And everyone we've sent you, friends, family, strangers, man, y'all have really done some healing in this community. And I just, as part of the community, want to thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, we've worked cases before. You know, I've been out to speak at the stable several times, which is, you know, a ministry that you have out there for Men of Courage. And so we've run into each other, but we've never really had a full-blown conversation that isn't around somebody else's trauma.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about, you know, we're working in some cases right now with this look-back law. And so you and I have been talking, and I just thought it'd be a great opportunity for you to come on and tell people about, you know, one, who you are and the great work that you do. And then second, like, what is this and why should people know about it and what can they do? So first, start with kind of tell me your story. How did, you know, you got you know, we were joking about your CV, but it's like, you know, 75 pages long. And so tell me about kind of how you became a lawyer and how your faith played into that and why you're doing this.
You know, I grew up on Bardot Street behind Two Johns, worked at my dad's salvage yard where he'd buy broken cars and we'd sell the parts. He was kind of amazed that I knew where every part was on every car. And he's like, you're pretty smart. We need a lawyer in the family. And we really did. We needed a criminal lawyer because my brothers always got in trouble. And so, you know, my dad was a Marine. So people say, Ryan, how are you so stalwart and steadfast in court? Like, didn't that judge rattle you? Didn't that defense attorney rattle you? I'm like, I used to hold the light for my dad.
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
at a young age. So
I love those memes that are like, these kids these days clearly haven't held the flashlight for their father.
No. And so, you know, looking back, that really prepared me. It didn't desensitize me, but it gave me compassion and empathy for folks who are going through tough times with their kids and their family. Because even though, you know, really nothing bad ever happened to us, there's bad stuff that happens during that time. So kind of grew up, you know, I was a mathlete and an athlete. You know, I did great in school and accomplished a lot of things and went to LSU undergrad, graduated in a year early. Okay. Then I went to law school. I was president of my fraternity there, so experienced a lot of sin and regret. Susan, my wife, and I have been dating really since Airline High School, and we've been married 30 years.
Yeah, you can't see her, but shout out to Susan. She's sitting in the background listening to us and watching us. It's my first live guest in the background of the podcast.
So if you hear any heckling or correction,
that's right.
But, you know, Susan and I, we kind of connected. God put us together at an early age, and, you know, we ended up getting married in 1996. And I started law school, and she finished her PhD in psychology. And, you know, we had Catherine when we were on Medicaid, and now she's a SMU law student in her second year.
Wow.
Elizabeth, our second daughter, got all my fun genes and all Susan's brain genes. And so she ended up going to Vanderbilt and getting a degree in biomedical engineering, and she's works over in Fort Worth at Medtronic. And then our third daughter, Rebecca, passed away from a brain injury that she had during birth. It was avoidable. And we could do a whole show on that grief and how God got us through it. But Susan was really the anchor in the lighthouse during that time, and she got us through that, and she put it all in perspective. So Rebecca passed away at about 10 years old, and she weighed 28 pounds. She was a spastic quadriplegic from her brain injury. And that really kind of shaped our life, even more so than law school or PhDs. You know, when the doctor comes out and says, when he tells you in the room and your wife's in labor, he says, look, I've messed up. Mom may not make it and baby may not make it. And, I just went out and God put Proverbs in my head, don't rely on your own understanding. And even though I'd done brain injury cases and could read an MRI, I was just like, okay, I'm not going to focus on the medical. I'm going to focus on the Messiah. So we really, became better and not bitter during that time, and it shaped us. Even though we're going to financial turmoil and emotional turmoil, Great Depression, we look back now to April the 25th of 07 through July 31st of 17 and say, wow, God, that trauma, that drama, never knowing when she was going to wake up or not, that was a beautiful time. And our fourth daughter is Charlotte, because God has a sense of humor.
Dude, you know how to make girls, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know, dude. I am outnumbered. When I was at LSU, I turned down a job at the DG house to be the houseboy, and I felt like God wanted me to do that, but I said no, so he made me a forever houseboy.
That's right.
Of a house full of girls. So Charlotte's just a wonderful 16-year-old. She thinks she's an only child because she's the only one in the house now. Yeah. She's a great athlete. She's off the chart smart like her mom, and she loves volunteering at Ron McDonald House because she could hold her sister, her big sister. She would feed her big sister through the feeding tube, and she would calm her during the seizure time. So that being said, that's kind of my family. God's had me on a pretty good road where I can't take credit for anything, and just put me in the right schools, put me in the right rooms. And I can't really explain it at 52 how, I grew up working at my dad's wrecking yard. I have a brother in prison. I have a brother that committed suicide. I have a brother who's a PT and major in the National Guard. And I'm sitting there thinking, every once in a while I'll wake up and like, was I really in the state Senate? Mm-hmm. Do I really have a church in my backyard? Like, God, thank you so much for just letting me experience your favor, because your favor is not fair.
Yeah, man.
And so, I can't take credit from my kids because they got all that from my wife. And I can't, and you're the same way, where humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less.
That's right.
And so, God really worked through all that. And then I started, we found out we were having a baby and we're broke. And I'm studying for the bar and I'm like, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. And so I turned down a job that I had in Shreveport because I was going to drive back and forth from Baton Rouge to Shreveport while she was doing her PhD. I said, I can't do that now because I want to be here during the pregnancy. I want to read to the baby in the womb. And I'm going to have 10 sons, so, I want to be here, And really, Clint, what happened is I started my firm in the third bedroom of our little house in Baton Rouge, and I had the threshold rule. If you called me and I could walk across the threshold of your house, I would help you. Mm-hmm. And so it was a ministry before I knew it was, and now we've grown into. And I have to pinch myself because God has allowed that ministry to continue. Our mission statement now at the firm is to guide you through the legal process with Christian compassion, complete clarity, and high competency while removing toxicity from the process.
That's good.
And so we're not always a good match for everybody, thank goodness. But the people that we do help, they have to agree with that mission statement up front.
Yeah.
And so we've really enjoyed practicing law in our community. We moved back to Bossier in 2002 just for a year so Susan could work at the med school, and that was 2002.
Yeah.
And so 25 years later, we've been in this community where I grew up, and we love it. We love being a part of it. A lot of folks talk bad about our community. I think we have a lot of great fabric here to work with, and I think we have a lot of great people. So, that's where I see you and I have commonality because folks ask me all the time, why aren't you in Dallas? Why aren't you in Houston? And I'm like, this is where I'm from. There's so many good people here. I like going to Strawn's and knowing the waitress's name. I like, going to church and sitting by the people that I know and going through life with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, I've just really enjoyed practicing law. I've really enjoyed helping Mark Rohde with the Ministry of Men of Courage.
Yeah. I love Mark.
He's like, Gatti, I cannot believe you let us use your barn that you built to work on old cars with your dad. And I'm like, if I would have known I was building it for you, I would have been embarrassed.
Yeah.
And so Ronnie Coker spoke one time, I think after you did at Man Church, and Ronnie had cancer, and Ronnie said, Gatti, why'd you build this place? And I said, to restore cars. He said, well, God's using it to restore men.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Jesus juked me all the time. I'm like, you know what?
That's great.
But it's been great, looking back, enjoy practicing law. Recently we helped a client uncover some wounds that happened in the 60s and 70s. And
yeah, so tell me about that. So, you and I are here kind of today to talk about the look back law. So tell us what that is, people listening, because one of the, unfortunately, made my career off of helping people recover from trauma, and wrote a book on sexual abuse prevention and childhood neglect and those kind of things. And, since that, the last 5 years, I travel, speak at churches and schools and doing all this kind of stuff. And so obviously I see a lot of victims, worked in human trafficking for a decade. And I didn't know about the look back law, right? You sent me the case, the case you had won. And I was like, oh man, this is a thing. I knew that you could file civil or criminal charges, but didn't know anything about this. So tell me, what is the look back law and when did that come into effect and how does it work?
The look back law in Louisiana was passed in 2021.
Okay.
Not a lot of people know about it. I have explained this to sex crimes detectives, counselors of trauma, and a lot of individuals have called me after our record verdict. Mm-hmm. And it's really simple. The problem that we had under Louisiana law is that when a minor is injured in any way, they have until 1 year after they reach the age of 18 to file a lawsuit. And if they don't file it by their 19th birthday, it's forever erased. They do not have a right to have their harms and losses heard about by a judge in civil court. Mm-hmm. So as folks would come to me before the look back law and they say, Ryan, I was in a psychology class and I realize now at 40 that what my teacher or coach or minister did to me was wrong, and that's why I was in rehab. That's why my marriage fell apart. That's why this happened. I'm ready to have courage and file a suit against them in civil court to recover all my harms and losses. And I would have to pull them aside and tell them, you waited too long. Mm. And they would say, I didn't even have time to unpack this mentally. At 19, I was still being abused. Mm-hmm. And I would tell them that's what abusers do.
That's right.
We've had so many cases where the abuser will abuse the child through the age of majority, sometimes into their 20s, and that's what happened to Pam. So we filed Pam's case in 2011. The judge said, you've waited too long. And so when the look-back law passed in 2021, the look-back law is so beautiful and simple. It says if you've ever been hurt sexually before, under the age of 17, any time in the past, we're going to open a 3-year window where you can bring your case to the civil court. Mm. Pam was the second jury trial under the look-back law. And so we had to explain that to the jury because a lot of them said, why'd y'all wait so long? Well, because the law was challenged. Mm-hmm. So from 2021 to 2024,
so that's a great, not to interrupt you, but that's a great point. So 2 things. One, when you're a victim of sexual abuse and sexual trauma and you're 19, one, emotionally you're more immature internally. You already probably tried to report it and tell someone about it and it got dismissed. There's all these reasons for why that's the case, and we can do a whole podcast on it. But 2, the law itself is saying, hey, after a year, you can't get any help with this anyway, so why would somebody come forward? Because that's a big question people ask, especially in our culture now with social media. They'll say, well, why are you waiting until you're 40 to get this money? It's just all about money or whatever. But they don't understand the legality and the perspective of a victim.
Yeah, and when we go to civil court, whether I'm representing someone with a brain injury, a crushed spine, crushed legs, whatever it is, the only thing the jury can do is apply a monetary value to their harms and losses. And I always tell them, you're like the expert they call in on the Antiques Roadshow or Pawn Stars. We don't even know if a little girl's purity in the 60s is worth anything. And so we tell the jury that our founding fathers and God felt like you should play the role of that expert that they call in on Pawn Stars. Say, what's the fair trade value for this loss of enjoyment of life, the shame, the silence, the PTSD that comes with this? And I was so proud of that Bossier jury. We connected with them, and the trial only lasted 2 days.
And when was this?
June the 8th of 2026. So, but to be clear, the look-back law is really kind of a miracle, too, because so many folks have carried the shame from childhood abuse, and there was no outlet. And so I think the legislature did a wise thing, and I don't say that very often, having been a member of that legislature.
It's hard to get them to pass stuff like this.
Yeah, so we have a lot of folks calling us, and we give them information. We don't tell them what to do. We say, this is the law. Well, Mr. Gatti, 10 years ago, I told my wife about what that coach did to me, and we talked to a lawyer in Baton Rouge, and he said we waited too long. I said, well, he was right.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sure you're getting that a lot, that people, and that's part of why I want to do the podcast, is because so many, I've had people come in and say, hey, this happened, but now I can't do anything about it. I've met with a lawyer and they said, hey, we can't do anything. And they were right, but that's changed.
It has changed. And even since the change happened, there's been confusion to keep the message kind of drowned it out. And there's been kind of a movement to keep it silent.
Interesting.
Because, it's a big deal to say, hey, that coach, that minister, that camp leader, that dad, stepdad in the case we had, that you can now go back if it happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s and get some closure. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you about the money part. When I was holding Pam's hand, when the clerk read the verdict, I was weeping. Mm-hmm. And she smiled. It's the first time I saw her smile. Mm. And the closure that she got from the jury saying your shame, your silence is honored in our community. It was I'll never I don't know where I parked my car today. I will never forget that moment. And the judge said before the verdict was read, he goes, I don't want any outburst from nobody. And so I'm like literally snot crying. Mm-hmm. And Pam looks at me and says, Gatti, you're going to get thrown out of here. And so that moment of closure, she smiles now. She laughs. She's a wonderful woman. I mean, she's great. Husband of 48 years. When we have a client, we walk in their shoes. We live their story. We don't have thousands of clients. We have very few that we work with. But that look-back law was powerful.
Since that's public, can you tell me a little bit about that story and just kind of how did it play out as far as the law and why it was such a kind of victorious win? If you don't get any money, what's the point? I think was what people would ask.
So there's really three things that happened that were monumental during that trial. Number one, most of these situations are settled, non-disclosure agreement, and the pedophile never has to face any public civil or criminal penalties. Mm.
And why is that?
Well, a school board, a corporation, a camp, a church, what they say to this person who struggled is, we'll give you a couple $100,000, which is more money than they've ever seen, not anywhere near what their physical and mental pain is worth.
Right.
But you can't ever tell anybody about it. And I don't like those, and it doesn't even give partial healing. So what we did in Pam's case is I told her, I said, it's going to be tough sitting through this trial. We're going to ask 12 strangers who've never heard your story. We're going to have your psychiatrist is going to give grave detail about what happened to you on Parkway Drive from 1962 to 75. And Pam, there's a chance they won't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance they think you only want money. I said, knowing all of those chances, do you still want to go forward? She goes, God has given me the strength and the power and the courage to even come see you. And her husband is just a stalwart Christian. They weren't always, they were rock and rollers back in the 80s, you know, but they have a wonderful salvation story. And they said, we just feel, we don't know what's going to happen. We need to do something. And so that was kind of monumental that the case got to go to trial. The defendant had died in 2023. He died during the time the case was, the main case was challenging the constitutionality of this. So we had to wait 3 years just for the state Supreme Court to say the legislature can do a law like this. And Clint, the first time the state Supreme Court heard this, they said it's unconstitutional. The time has passed. Another miracle was 2 months later, they reversed themselves and said, this is the only avenue these people could ever have justice. So that was the second miracle. But I think, during the trial, what we experienced spiritually and really in reality was that I didn't exclude anybody from the jury. Everybody, I was like, the other side did, but I said, do you have a problem that she waited? Yeah. Well, but I have to show you a confession. And we had a confession because he knew the time had passed.
Right.
He confessed.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There's so many situations out there where that's the case. They've said it to somebody, they've reiterated it somewhere, and but they know they can't. There's nothing that can happen.
Yeah. So the third thing that really happened was the number they gave. Because I'm thinking the biggest verdict in the history of Louisiana for one person, like $411 million. We're not getting that. We might get $5 or $10 million. And when the jury came back and they gave 3 numbers, and the first one was for pain and suffering in the past, future, $500 million. For our medical bills, which we didn't really put on a lot of evidence for that, $585,000. And then in punitive damages, that's to punish the next one that's thinking about it, $600 million. The $500 million and the $600 million are individually the largest verdicts. But what I asked the jury to do, and it was a risk, I said, this first number is what Pam went through, what her little body went through, the embarrassment, the loss of joy. I said, this third number down here, you have to send a message to anyone, even people who can buy an island, anyone who's maybe got a $500 million contract with a sports team, anyone that come to our casinos and order up a child, that number has to be so big that those people will say, it's too rich for my blood. Now, I didn't think they would give $600 million.
Right.
But I think that captured everybody's attention who would think about hurting a child in our area. So what most folks don't know about the case is the level of the verdict increased the level of safety.
Okay.
And so
tell me about that.
So the power of the jury system, our founding fathers put it together, is that the jury of 12 gets to decide the level of safety with the level of their number.
Okay.
So if a drunk 18-wheeler driver, if you're okay with that, give a low number. Then they're not going to check them, make them have a breathalyzer. Okay. If you're mad about truck drivers using meth and driving 90 miles an hour, then give a big number, get their attention. And so as a lawyer, that's kind of my second nature.
And the big number allows for the next case to shoot for that? Is that what happens?
Well, it also changes the behavior.
Right.
And so it's a behavior modification tool that our founding fathers thought of. So people hear, wow, man, is that a B in that verdict in the Lockridge case?
Yeah, so many people have asked. I've talked about it, and they're like, are you saying a B?
Yeah, they're like, well, maybe our church should do background checks.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be a little more careful in who we let the kids hang out with. Because what we found with a lot of folks and a lot of corporations is that their God is money, which is, we all struggle with that. But that's when they change behavior. What is the bottom line cost of doing if we do $1,200 background checks? That's a lot of money. Yeah, but boss, do you want to be on the hook for $1 billion verdict? Okay, go spend that $200,000. Every teacher up in here has got to get a thorough FBI background check.
Right, because if something goes wrong, now there's a status that says, hey, this is how much you lose if this goes poorly.
Well, this is what the value of a child's purity is worth when it's taken without their permission at an age they can't even consent to it.
Right.
And so a lot of folks have called us and said, we don't want to file a suit. We just want to thank you because we've been living vicariously through Pam's case. So I was able to tell Pam, this is really kind of the fourth thing, Pam, you just got $1 billion worth of Neosporin to spread out in the community. And there's people you don't even know that are just happy to know 12 strangers met for 2 days and they decided to place the highest value on a little girl's purity that was taken without her permission when she wasn't even able to give consent. And
so good.
And it was, and it's a...
Well, this is why we like music. This is why we like books. This is why we like films. This is why we like, these things as humans, is that we have this baked in God, Imago Dei sense of justice, right? Sense of making things right. I was talking to a buddy this weekend and, just talking about faith. And, I was like, we all know something's wrong in the world, right? Whether you believe in God or not, we're just trying to decide what that wrong is and then what's the solution for it. And we believe in Christ. And so I think when other people have suffered and there hasn't been vindication and there hasn't been justice and they're sitting in that pain for years and years and years, seeing the plot of a movie is a lot different than seeing a real person who's been advocated for, and that gives people hope. And it does, I think, help people see that God is still working and bringing justice in this life. Even though our hope is in eternity, it's like, but He's still working and bringing justice now, and that's everybody's story.
Well, and I wish I could say it's some book I read or some seminar I went to. It is literally the grief I went through with my daughter. We trusted a doctor, and he dropped the ball. And so Pam didn't have to articulate to me what it was like to have a life-changing event happen by someone who you trusted. And so I took that common shared experience that she and I had, and I just marinated on it for years. And I prayed that God would light my path in a way. And this was my first jury trial ever. So, these billboard lawyers put $1 billion in verdicts. I could put $1 billion in verdict. That's what my friend said. So it's one of those things where I can't take the credit for that, but God orchestrated all this. Like you and I are both Christians. We have deep faith. We've talked about that. And I really felt like I had one stone going up against the Goliath of pedophilia in the civil system, which had not been done before successfully because they always had the shield of time. And I just pictured a little girl at 18 years old and 364 days and 23 hours watching that clock tick down. And I thought, I have daughters. We protected them. And God really showed out. And now I feel like that it's created another ministry that you've been in for a while, is the childhood trauma, that baggage that we bring into adulthood. And there's all kinds of variations of that change our behavior. But with sex abuse specifically from a figure of authority, especially one who is very good at grooming, very good at waiting, very good at plotting. I got depressed internalizing some of Pam's feelings.
Well, empathy has that, that power. It's a double-edged sword. You can be, they call it compassion fatigue, but I think empathy fatigue is a better term for it. I think everybody can be compassionate all the time. I think empathy requires going down into your soul and pulling up this E of empathy because you have personal experience with pain.
Yeah.
And you just can't do that for everybody, right? Because it has seaweed on it. It has like all this like messed up stuff on it that it's a superpower because this is what Christ has for us. He has sympathy. He came down and he suffered and he died. He was betrayed. He was abandoned. He was spit on. He was crucified. He was rejected by man, the people that he came to save, by the people 2 days before who were saying, Hosanna, he's being crucified by.
Right.
They trade Barabbas for him, who's the criminal. Like, if anybody understands, it is Christ. And so the only way you and I, through our own trauma and pain, can sit with people is because he's first done it for us.
Correct.
So there's this superpower of empathy. But unlike Christ, we are not perfect.
Right.
And so we have to be careful. We can be compassionate. But in these cases where you work with people over and over and over, there is this like, man, I've just heard it so much and I've listened to it so much. And recently you had me come in
Yes.
and talk to your staff. And, you know, that's something that I love to get to do with people who are working with victims or any kind of heavy trauma.
I'll tell you what, that team, we have a team meeting every Monday morning, and I always talk too long, and they always get upset with me, and it's like a Sunday school class gone too long. And after Pam's verdict, we were all worn out. Like it was all hands on deck. Mm-hmm. We had a mini office in the conference room. I did not want to let her down. I mean, I'm walking around in my front yard at 4 a.m. talking to my research assistant, Chattery GPT the Fifth, and he's counseling me about how to help Pam and how to do this case, and talking to the jury, and it just hit me after that verdict. I really had to take some time off for the first time in a long time, and God just put it on my heart. I'm like, I wonder if Clint could come do our team meeting, and I'm telling you, that was the ointment we needed.
Well, good. Praise God.
Because everybody has gone through grief on our team. I only hire people whose life's been lifey, you know, who've been through stuff or who understand what it's like. And so we were all triggered from something in childhood sitting through that trial. And I'm not, as the boss, I didn't feel equipped to unpack that with the people in my office. So I'm so glad you came by, and I would encourage any team that's doing work like this at this level to have you come by for an hour and just do what you did with us. And like I told you, I think you should come once a month.
Yeah.
You know, and just
I think we're signed up for it.
Well, good, because that's to be the shortest team meetings we have all month.
That's
Because
right.
you watch your clock, I do not. So, but you know, that being said, this look back law, it's a powerful thing. It has a lot of information that we share. And what we tell people when they call, and they have the same stories. Ryan, does this apply? I went to East Cattle Gap High School. The softball coach did this to me over a period of 2 years. I've never told anyone. Is my silence going to exclude me? We just tested that issue. Silence for 35 years doesn't exclude you.
That's good.
We ask them if they've been to counseling, because we can solve their legal problems, but we can't solve the spiritual baggage problem. So if they're here local, we ask them to go see you, or we call you and say, who should they go see for this specific hurt? We've had people call where it's a family member. We've had people call where it happened at a church camp. Recently, you know, we had some folks come forward, and it was, don't want to talk about it because it's active, but I thought this is going to be magic or tragic for them mentally. Yeah. Because this is a big deal that happened to them, and it's real, and everybody knew about it, and God has really given them so much ointment.
Yeah, they're doing some good work.
And it's been amazing how He can make a message out of your mess. But you and I've seen that so many times. I don't even know why I get worried about it anymore.
Because we're human.
Yeah, and then you know, the situations we've seen is, you know, trying to explain to folks that the amount of time that has passed doesn't matter, but you only have until June of 2027 to pull the trigger. Right.
So that's what I wanted you to cover. Yeah. So we got one more year, basically, a little less, 10 months.
Yeah. And so it's you know, the one downside I see of having a sunset on this law is that it kind of forces someone to deal with something that they're not ready for, which I feel like is the same problem they had under the old law. Yeah. Because you're saying, like these guys, 3 years should be enough for someone to unpack this with a counselor, go see a lawyer, tell a stranger everything that happened to him as a child. And so knowing that's a weakness in the law, and that's why I had you come talk to our team about how to better handle someone who's unpacking trauma with a lawyer. and what we've kind of determined as a team is our process is going to be, thank you for calling. We don't want you to unpack this with us. We want you to go unpack it with a counselor. You can tell us a few of the dates and times and the names, but similar to what happens when a child is hurt, they don't tell the police and tell the count. They go to the gingerbread house. They tell it one time.
That's right.
And then that one-time video is shared with everyone so that the child doesn't get re-traumatized by telling the story over and over again. So do you feel like that's a good process?
That's great,
for us
man.
to
That's
use?
what we talked about. Yeah. So, I'm actually having the gingerbread house on in the next couple of months, so I'm excited about that too. Yeah, I think that any buffer that we can have for people where they're not having to relive that story multiple times, is helpful, because you're going to get the information, but it can really re-traumatize the person if they're having to tell it. And people mean well and they don't know what to say. And so I'm proud of you guys for having, me come in and us come in and do the training. And I think, my analogy is always as an Army veteran, I feel like our society as a whole, it's like when you're in the military, at least I can say in the Army, everybody has basic training. Right, you know how to shoot your AR-15. Right. You know how to, put a tourniquet on a wound. You know how to pick somebody up and drag them out of a firefight. It doesn't matter if you're like the comms guy, or the infantry, or the medic or whatever. You have this basic training. But I feel like because of the Industrial Revolution and because of such an individualized culture, and really, honestly, the American dream, we have forgotten like what it's like to just be human first. And so we don't have basic training. Kids, families, the generation before us didn't have any kind of emotional intelligence training. They didn't understand the brain and the body. And the church itself really, I think, left a lot of that out. And my goal as a practice is, how do we give people basic training again? How do we help lawyers, hairdressers, cops, teachers recognize they don't have to be a therapist? But man, if you have basic training, if you know how to just say the right things and not say the wrong things and be available for a short period of time, that in of itself is so validating to that victim or that person who's been through trauma. And then you need to know how to refer and send them and collaborate with good people who can do the work. And then we work back and forth together. And that, to me, that's the body of Christ, working with our different tools and resources to work together to find healing for these people who've been through things that they should never have been through and who God did not want them to go through. And to me, man, like that's ministry.
It is. And I think the multidisciplinary approach that I was using kind of randomly on like brain injury cases, I'd make sure my client had the best brain doctor, the best physical therapist, the best OT, and we have to kind of cobble together the multidisciplinary team. Right. And so now we're using that with injuries you can't see.
That's right.
And these are hard because when you have an injury you can't see, and sometimes we had that in brain injury cases, you could tell their eye wasn't focused, or you could tell their head was, hair would grown over a big hole in their head. But, with these trauma-induced injuries, the only evidence is in the axons and dendrites in their brain.
Yeah.
And so handling that is actually, it should be easier, right? But man, I find that, like my brain injury client, I'll go to their house. I'll see all the handicap equipment. I'll put it on myself. I want to know, like the husband shaving the wife's legs because she can no longer do it. I mean, I'm bawling, crying, but I gotta experience it, But this childhood trauma that happened 40 years ago, I mean, I literally, the closest I could get to the experience I had with my other clients is I literally had my PI find out where these people lived when the trauma happened. And I went and sat in front of the house and just cried. Took a picture of it. And I made it on my phone. I said, God, don't let me forget this is real.
Yeah, man.
Don't let me build such a wall as a man that God, let me visit that emotion. And Lord, if I need to get a battle scar from it, that's okay. But let you use it so I can do a better opening, a better closing, or just love this family. And it's powerful.
It is.
To connect. But listening to your podcast, reading books on mental anguish and mental injuries, and where lawyers drop the ball because, in law school, they don't teach you this.
No, well, that's the point. They don't give you this training anywhere. Whether you're a lawyer, sometimes whether you're a pastor. I've worked so many personal injury cases where, a lawyer, the client that I'm seeing will come in and the lawyer has like their wreck or the abuse pictures or the bloody rag or whatever up on the screen, and the client comes in and goes, and they're like, well, we're going to show you what we're going to show, but they gave them no prep. They've not talked to them through these things. Man. And it's like so triggering. And now I'm spending 6 weeks,
undoing the mess.
Yeah. And it's like, well, how do you think they're going to be good on the stand if, you're re-traumatizing them and triggering them through this? So thanks for the recommendation. And anybody listening to this, like, I think it would behoove you and help you as a lawyer, as a doctor, with whatever you're doing with your clients to be, I like to call it trauma responsive.
Yes.
So instead of calling it, there's a lot of talk about trauma informed, but I feel like we have this culture right now where we're really informed about things, but we don't do anything. And so I like the idea of trauma responsive care because it's you learn it and then you do something about it. Jesus says to the disciples, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say?
Well, and I think it's that faith and works aspect that James talks about in chapter 2, that steadfastness that he talks about that comes through trials and tribulations in chapter 1 is really feeding into, okay, if you've been through trials and tribulations and you consider it pure joy and you've built up this steadfastness, what do you do with it?
Right.
Works with faith.
That's right.
Works with faith is not the end result.
Yeah, they're not saving you.
Of the salvific moment.
That's right.
But it is a fruit of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, so with my team, we have Bible study. We talk about stuff. God's in the middle of it. And then, little things too that we found out are big things. I thought my greatest weakness was never really working for someone else.
Yeah.
I'm getting like, man, I didn't work at the big firm. I clerked there. I didn't do the clerkship. I didn't do this. And now
you started your practice in like the kitchen or the closet or something like that?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I had a laptop and a digital cell phone, and people thought, you're such a sweet boy to drive to my house and meet me. I said, ma'am, I just did it because I care about you. I didn't have a place for them to come. My kitchen table in a little house off of Brightside in Baton Rouge, And so, and now looking back, what I thought was a horrible way to start a law career actually insulated me from a lot of the things that we see our clients who had other attorneys and then come to us. Like the other day, you met with us in our courtroom. Mm-hmm. And
I was going to get you to talk about that. That was so awesome.
I'll tell you what.
Well, let me brag about it. So when you walk into Ryan's office, he's got like a full courtroom set up, and it's set up for the clients so they can be there to literally experience what it will be like to be in court, so that they can, like with a lot of what we do with EMDR is to help them reprocess the trauma. This is letting them get their angst out, getting their experience out, kind of get the jitters out. And talk about how they feel about it, sit in the chair, sit with people looking at them. And I just thought that was really, really awesome. I don't know if anybody else does that in town, but that was such a cool, like from a trauma-informed or trauma-responsive lens, it was like, oh man, this is such a beautiful thing to allow the nervous system and the, that responsiveness to relax and to practice. Because what you're talking about, just to nerd out for a second, is what's called the window of tolerance.
Correct.
Right. And so you either hypo, you shut down, or you hyper, you freak out. And the two things that are the oil to open the window are safety and then practice. That's it. So you have to have a safe environment where you go, okay, I'm reasonably safe here to practice. And then I have to actually like do the hard thing in small doses in order for that window to open. So you're doing that, and that's a awesome thing.
Well, I don't know all the nerd words. Let me do the inverse of nerding out.
We'll talk about the carpet too.
I played football at Airline, and I was
nerd word.
I was like second string center, and I was behind Scott Oakley, who's a really good athlete. No, he's not, but he's taken on my lifestyle of slumber. But Scott's a great friend even today, and Scott got a hip pointer. We were playing Houghton, and Coach put me in the game. I had never run a play in practice as center. And on the video, I looked like I was playing flag football. And Coach said, "You didn't know." I'm like, "Coach, I'm on the scout team. Mm-hmm. You have never put me in to hike the ball to Lamar Lowe. That's the first time." And so that sat with me, and I ended up doing all right with football. Became team captain and all that. Shortest one on the team ever to be elected team captain in Airlines history. But that stuck with me. And then I would, when I was young, I would go watch court when I was a young lawyer. And I would see a lawyer walk in and say, "Are you John Smith? Are you John Smith? Are you John Smith?" I'm like, "John Smith going to jail." Because he don't know as a lawyer. And I would use that in teaching Sunday school. I'd say, if you die and Jesus is sitting beside you and you say, "Who are you?"
Ooh.
It's Matthew 7, "Depart from me, I never knew you." And so we get to know people and stuff and processes by spending time. You know someone loves you because they spend time with you. So we kind of brought that over into the practice of law, and I got ridiculed about it. "You spend too much time with people." I'm like, "Thank you." I'm like, "No, we didn't mean that as a compliment." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not billing them for the time."
Yeah.
And so when we bought that building from the Reeser family, they had a 20 by 50 room that they used for all their Sonic managers to meet. And this red and blue and hot dogs glued to the, not real hot dogs, but like pictures of all the cool stuff. I'm like, "What do we do with this room?" And Susan was like, "Let's just make it a courtroom." So I'm like, "That'd be cool." So that nudge from her, we started building it and doing everything. And we needed carpet. And so, and we didn't know we were going to do whatever kind of trauma training you were talking about. We were just like,
Sure.
it's going to be cool to have a courtroom.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Well, that's what God's sovereignty does. I think
Yeah.
that's cool.
I do better on accident than I do on purpose. Like, that's been my life story. And then, it was time to put carpet down. And my good friend Derek Johnson called me just out of the blue and said, "Hey, I hear you're renovating that old building. Man, we got a ton of carpet left over from a deal in Benton, and we're just, if you'll pay my guys, you can have it cheap." And so I said, "Come on by." So he brought a swatch of it by, threw it against the wall, said, "Perfect. Susan approved of it. That's great." He goes, "Guess where it's from?" And I said, "I don't know, a church." He goes, "The Bossier Courthouse." And I was like, "Derek, did you know this was going to be a courtroom?" He goes, "No." And so that was a God moment. You know, we have all had them, and a coincidence is just God winking at you and not taking credit. So
So it's like the literal carpet that they're going to be walking in is in the courtroom.
And so that's why I tell them. Now, I don't tell them it happened by accident. I take full credit. I said, "Ma'am, we care so much about you, and I know it's going to cause a lot of anxiety. I bought the same carpet."
That's right.
You know, but then I tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And but man, we put them in that courtroom. We put them on the stand, and we have them walk around. They get it where the judge sits. They sit where the jury's going to sit, and what we did on accident is kind of what you said it would be. I had a man sit down with me, and we were in a pretty heated custody battle, and he hired me to kind of try to finish it. And I said, "Man, I'm going to help you. Come on in." And so I learned a story, got to know him really well, because this wasn't just like an easy case. This was a lot of trauma. This was a lot of stuff going on. And I'm like, "Man, should I put him in the courtroom? He's going to be the first one." So we went in that courtroom, and just passage of time happened. He went from jittery, like I was on that football play, to like I was my senior year, just smacking the linebacker right on time. And we're careful to tell them, I would listen to their words, and then I would say them back to them. And I would say, "This makes sense to you and me, but it's not your truth. Can you tell me something a little closer to the truth?" I'll say, "Just kind of close your eyes. Why don't you step away from that chair and think about what you just said. And now tell yourself like what you should have said. Oh man, I should have said, Mac's wife does a good job raising the kids." I'm like, "Is that truth? Then say it." And he left there, a couple hours later. He goes, "Are you gonna bill me for this time?" I'm like, "No, we're just talking as friends." And he said, in 10 years of going through this custody battle, I've never had someone sit down with me before court and talk about what it was going to be like, what the judges like, because we have excellent judges in Bossier. I hope they're hearing that. But but like I'd say, look, you have a tough judge. He was a prosecutor. He's going to know when you're lying.
Yeah.
But he's a good man.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I mean, we have good judges. We also have other good lawyers.
Great lawyers.
That's the great thing. I'm always with counseling. People will say, "Oh, this is fantastic. We love sending people here," and I'm like, "Well, if they're not a good fit for us, though, we got other people to refer to in our city." And I've worked with Rice and Kindig and several others. They've had me come in and do some trainings, and so it's beautiful to see. What I've seen in a decade or more of doing this work is we do have more lawyers who are more concerned about the client than they are just winning the case.
I would say Marshall Rice is a fellow Christian. He and I share a lot of the same values. He's a great lawyer.
Yep.
And we share ideas. And there's several other in town that I'll communicate with, whether it's family law or like personal injury with Marshall, because we have a kind of a broad practice. We do adoptions to brain injuries and burn cases and now look-back law cases.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of great people in town that we collaborate with at different levels. Go
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, no, it's good. What do you hope, the message gets out on this podcast? Like, what would you want to kind of wrap up with and just say, hey, this is what I hope people hear. This is what I want them to know about this look back law and how they can get help, whether it's in this city or, anywhere else.
Well, I want them to know that if they call our team, we're just going to give them information. We are our clients' employees. We make that clear. They don't sign a contract with a lawyer. They sign a contract of employment where they're asking me to work for them. And so my job as a lawyer is to dispense meaningful information about the situation that they're in. And these meetings don't cost them anything. They can come talk to us for free. And just the time we are in our career, we'll set aside an hour or two, and what they can expect when they, we're kind of down Viking Drive. It's a one-way street with a circle at the end. They'll pull in the driveway. They'll park. They will not sit down in our waiting room. Our waiting room is our smallest room. They will be put in one of our 8 conference rooms, and they will have a confidential conversation about what happened. We'll ask a lot of questions, and then we'll figure out a plan. But this look-back window, the second thing they need to know is that the window is going to close. And I'm very afraid because of our verdict, the legislature is not going to renew it. Because they've realized now it doesn't just to apply to a certain church. It applies to any of their friends that may have done this to a child at any time in the past. And that's that second group I was talking about.
Yeah, so that specifically it's not just a look back law to go, hey, the Catholic priest did this, so we're going to sue the Catholic Church, or this church did this. It's any person, any group, any individual. Is that right? Yeah,
when we've had think of any relationship that you've counseled an adult on where they were violated as a child. Think of how broad that list could be. Mom, dad, stepdad, stepmom, cousin, uncle, brother.
Yeah.
Whatever. Now, some of those, just the fact they come in, we could call the sheriff and take a pedophile off the street.
Right.
Never result in a look-back window case being filed. And that's happened.
Yep.
Okay. It could be take the pedophile off the street and have money for counseling, have money to cover your harms and losses. Some people are okay with just getting them off the street. Some people need closure because sometimes the person that hurt them is dead, or sometimes the person that hurt them has escaped criminal liability. So, and we're seeing that happen at the national level, right? The reason there's not a national look-back law is because there's a lot of people who are okay with a grown man hurting a child. And so I think that's what we want people to know, that our team will talk to them. There is a time limit, June of 27. We tell folks that call, go to counsel, but don't wait until June 20th to call us, because there are a lot of steps that have to happen to secure your claim before we file it.
Okay.
It's just, it's hard to talk about this process without reflecting on the trauma.
Yeah.
And that's what hurts me so bad, even talking about it like it's an exchange of information.
Well, we want to always, me and you talked about this before, but it's like we always want to be, even prepping to have this podcast, I met with my pastor. I was like, hey, I want to have Ryan on. I want to talk about this thing, but I want to make sure that it's best for the clients. I want to make sure. And then I called you and I was like, hey, we got an active thing going on. What do we do? So that's what I appreciate about our conversations is, I couldn't care less about a podcast, right? I care about there being people that are out there who could get help and support, and who could get financial support for counseling, who could get financial support for their kids, who could be validated and taught that, the theme that I see in so many of these cases is there's alcoholism, there's drug addiction, there's sex addiction, there's perpetuating trauma on other people. And although obviously as adults we're responsible for our actions, it's pretty insane, the consistent kind of like lack of a father, lack of connection, lack of support. I wrote a whole book on lack of education from parents on consent, body safety, and sexuality in general. And it's like all of those themes are there. And then you have these perpetrators who groom and set them up and go, for years and years. And then you have this individual who goes and, as a child, as a victim, has this label and this name written on them as bad and broken and dirty. They feel responsible and blamed. Then they move through their high school and college career doing drugs, being in terrible relationships, running away from God or running to God or running to the church for answers, and it's just more of the same. And now they're the problem, and they're hurting people and bleeding on people who didn't cut them. And for years they're carrying that. And now there's an opportunity for them to see, hey, one, this happens to lots of people. Two, when it happens to people, hey, surprise, surprise, there's a theme here in all of their lives with addiction, with alcoholism, with other, bad behaviors and unhealthy behaviors, but it didn't start with you, right? And there's some freedom in that. And so I think having something where there's a lot of victims that are able to come forward, like there's a community, there's a collaboration, there's a, hey, I'm not alone in this, and you start to see the patterns that unfold, and then you can take that that sense of broken identity and you can externalize it and say, hey, I am not broken, I am not dirty, I am not bad, I'm fighting abuse, I'm fighting someone who has perpetrated against me, and I can find freedom in that. And although I'm 45 or 55 or 65, man, my story is being told correctly. And then I think there's opportunity for those people to then, with their story being told, for the people that maybe they've hurt or they've betrayed or they've, compromised themselves with over the years, to say, hey, it doesn't excuse that behavior, but here's what was really happening. And then there can be reconciliation between those relationships. So there's such a gospel-centered, if we find healing here, the good that gets magnified in it is incredible. And so for me, that's what I'm excited about.
Well, and I'll break down what you just said, from the telescope to the microscope. Like Pam's husband, sweet man, 6'6", big old boy, played college basketball. He's working at a plant in Natchitoches. She gets a call that Pam's in Brentwood and that this guy just confessed to hurting her when she was a child. And I said, how did that change you? He said, his man answer, he goes, man, I love her. He said, but explain, Ryan, she wasn't a helicopter parent. She was an Apache helicopter parent with our daughter. And their story is so powerful because what you said would happen in general terms happened in that specific instant. That he went back and said, wow, she didn't rescue me, I was rescuing her. This introverted man made that God connection that, hey, when I met her, I thought I was rescuing her, she was rescuing me.
Yeah.
So all those connections happen because when you do God's will and He lights your path, you walk by faith and not by sight. And that courage to step out and say, I at least want to get some information from a counselor or a lawyer on this look back window, or at least want to Google it and get the right information. That's a big step. And the powerful thing about this law is that I never thought society cared. So we have the legislative branch said, we care about your shame and silence, and we give it value with the passage of a law. The governor, the executive branch said, even though a bunch of Republicans passed this, I'm going to sign it because I agree. We all agree it's universal, shared, common, environment that a child's purity is important and has value. But when the judicial system, through a jury, that third branch said, we give it the highest value. So I think the message listeners should have is Satan is saying your silence isn't honored. Your shame is valueless. Don't move forward. Let that guy keep doing what he did to you. Don't you come forward because the jury's just going to say you're not worth it. And I started to believe that until the verdict was read. I had a plan that if they zeroed us out, what to tell Pam and her husband, how victory doesn't always come in numbers. It's kind of like when I ran for office, I had the concession speech and the victory speech in my pocket, So you always have to be ready. And
Well, I'm glad you were surprised.
It was when the jury put the highest value on a little girl's purity, who really doesn't even exist anymore. You know, it was an amazing healing that happened. I don't think that was the intent of the legislation, for a little girl who was molested in the 60s and 70s by her stepdad to get closure and justice and ointment in Bossier Parish, Louisiana. But I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, well, I hope it's a radical look for everybody nationally to say, hey, how can we advocate for these things? How can we fight for these things? How can we push back for these things? And just for anybody listening who's a victim, you know, this podcast, this episode is not about me and Ryan. This is not about counseling or lawyers or, you know, it's ultimately about you hearing that there are real human beings who want to listen to you, who want to hear you, and who want to help you get the support and the healing that you need. And for me, and I know you as well, that comes from there being a good God who sent his son to die and suffer, and he sees your suffering and he hears you even after all these years, and he's been right there the entire time. Right, even though you might be mad, even though you might be angry, even though you might go, why, God, would you allow this to happen? And why have you not given me help? And why have you not changed the law? Right, there is a God who is still working and still bringing healing and restoration. And this is your opportunity to get that support that you need and to get good counsel. And if you are in an area where you don't have a lawyer that you trust or a counselor that you trust, reach out to us and we'll direct you to somebody in your location or in your office or give you the resources if it's not us to be able to help you. And if anybody's actively in cases working things right now, get the support you need. Find people that will listen to you and that have the right training and that can support you. And if your lawyer or your therapist isn't giving you that, then ask them to get the training or ask them to get the support. But, you know, fight for yourself. Advocate for yourself. Don't settle for something that in your gut you feel is not good and not safe. You know, you can stand in your empowered choices and know that God is behind you and with you, even though you might not be able to see him. So I just want to say that to anybody listening who is struggling with this, and just encourage you that the fight is not over and that there is hope. Ryan, any closing thoughts for you, man?
Yeah, there's value in silence. And I know when we were going through our stuff with Rebecca, I caught myself crying out to God, like, you don't know what it's like to see your child suffer. And it's like my spiritual foot got crammed in my mouth. And I'm like, you know exactly what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you'll find, and when you have the courage to come talk to a counselor about what you went through as a child, your expectations are going to be blown. You know, the fear that you had is going to turn into faith. You know, that corruption turns to courage. The mess becomes a message. And everybody deserves that chance to at least hear the information that that's a possibility. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad some lawyer referred Pam to me 16 years ago who thought her case was a dud.
Yeah, man.
You know, so God works all things out, like you said. And
I'll say this too, you know, we've talked a lot about God, but there's going to be people listening to this who don't believe in Jesus, who are from a different religion or a different, you know, culture. You know I and you want to help them and work with them and, you know, get them the justice they need, whether you believe in Jesus or not. You know, you deserve care and, you know, support. And so just because we talk a lot about God in our own faith doesn't mean that we're going to Bible beat you and you have to be a Christian to come get some support and some help, and that, you know, that's the way it's going to be. But we do want to come from the perspective of, you know, who we believe is giving that ultimate
correct. And so many women that we represent right now who've been traumatized as a child, we start with the story of the woman at the well. You know, and you know the apostles thought Jesus was going to throw her in the well and say, that doesn't count as your baptism.
Right.
And he loved her. He listened to her story, and he didn't say, you know, he said, I mean, if we'd have been sitting there watching that, it would have been a beautiful moment. Everyone else, he said, don't go tell anybody what happened. And with her, he said, let's go tell your family what's just happened. Mm-hmm. And I believe she became the first New Testament missionary. And when you share that powerful thing, that famous story, whether you believe in Christ or not, it's amazing that timeless story has given hurt women who are carrying the baggage of abuse. You mean really the Savior, the creator of the world, the one that you believe in, Mr. Gatti? Maybe I don't believe in him yet, but that he would hang out with me. He wants to adopt me into his family. Like, you know, girl, you don't understand how good this person you don't believe in is. Mm-hmm. And so as we walk through that with traumatized, especially women, we tell them, I know it's probably not the right counseling way to say it, but as a redneck lawyer, the way I tell them is that you're, you think about your credit score. It's got to be a 720 to get that rate. You got to have A+ to get into college. I said with Christ, it's different. It's your brokenness. It's your bankruptcy and sin that qualifies you for that relationship with Him. It's one of the few relationships where literally being broke and understanding how broke you are allows you to become part of that relationship with Him of healing and hope and salvation. But as we look at this look-back law, look, it's just one tool in our toolbox to help people. There's a lot of tools that we have as men in your background with counseling and the military, my background in law. This is just another tool in our toolbox to give people hope.
That's good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and taking your time to talk about it. I know you're out there helping people and doing depositions and running all over the place. So, dude, I appreciate it, and I hope that people get a lot out of this and that, the work that we do together as a community, right? Whether you're, Ryan Gatti, or whether you're Rice and Kendig, or whether you're whoever, whatever counseling agencies are here, Gingerbread House, let's just all keep working together, right? Especially those of us that are faith-based and Christians, let's be the body of Christ. Let's keep working together and find healing for some people. So
I agree.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, God bless you guys. Thanks for listening. You can find Ryan Gatti online. I'll put his website and all his links up, and then I'll put some stuff for the Look Back Law in the show notes. If you need something, email one of us, and we can direct you in the right place. God bless and have a good week.